Today's video is about narcissistic families. Now, in other videos we have gone over how someone becomes a narcissist and what a narcissist even is. But to recap, basically a narcissist is someone who can't see outside themselves, right? Other people merely exist to meet and gratify the needs of the narcissist. The moment that you don't, right, they discard you, okay? Now, it wouldn't really make sense for these people to have families since they're so selfish. But in actuality, narcissists oftentimes very well go ahead and have families. And if you come from a narcissistic household, you are more likely to develop anxiety, you are more likely to develop depression, you're more likely to develop low sense of self or very low self-worth, right? So it becomes very important to at least have the awareness of whether or not you came from this family. Now, here's signs of a narcissistic family, but before we even go into that, why do narcissists even go ahead and have families if they're so self-absorbed and entitled to their own stuff? Well, a parent with narcissistic personality disorder, they use the family essentially as its own status symbol and its separate entity to exploit for their own needs, okay? So if you come from a narcissistic household, family image matters above all else. It's very common for someone who has a narcissistic parent to be told how amazing and how great their family is and how incredible they seem in the community. But in all honesty, that's actually not what is happening in home, right? But the narcissist is making sure that they put on a picture-perfect image for everyone else to see, to elevate their status in front of others. Because the narcissist is all about external affirmation and external validation, all right? There's also parentification. This essentially means that the roles are reversed between the child and the parent. A narcissist is essentially a child in an adult body. So they will be expecting you to meet their emotional needs. They will be expecting you to take care of them. Sometimes the narcissistic parent will go to the child and essentially be putting on very intimate details about their life that's not the child's to know, right? But it's the child's to now be there and kind of be this emotional caretaker, which is not usually the role or responsibility of a son or daughter. Also, there's complete lack of emotional attunement to the children, all right? Narcissists are solely focused on themselves. They are oftentimes not going to be aware of what someone is feeling that's outside of them unless they can manipulate or exploit that behavior. So, if you were growing up in a household and your parent was constantly putting down your emotions or feelings, or you essentially weren't even allowed to have them, it's very much a sign of growing up in a narcissistic household. Also, unclear boundaries or boundaries don't exist at all. In a narcissistic household, there's a lot of enmeshment, meaning that the needs of the narcissist have to be the needs of the children, right? Children are not allowed to individuate or have autonomy. They have to completely be just another subset of the narcissistic parent. Basically, that means is diaries will be read, right? Phone conversations could be listened in on. Essentially, you're not allowed to have your own personal space. Also, the narcissist does not want the siblings coming together, right? The narcissist needs the attention to be on them. There's nothing more scary to the narcissist than truth. So, a narcissistic household will pit the siblings against one another. The siblings will not get along with each other, okay? And it's a very concerted and directed effort by the narcissistic parent to make sure the siblings don't get along so they don't kind of team up together and understand what is happening to them collectively. Also, you know you grow up in a narcissistic household if the parent expects praise for normal parental duties. Why am I doing a video on this topic? I grew up in one of these households. My mother expected immense praise for when her and my father drove me to the hospital when I was having a kidney stone attack, as if it was some glorious thing that they just drove me 5 minutes to the hospital. This is often very normal in a narcissistic household. Simple things of meeting your basic needs for food or paying the electric bill or anything of that nature, right? They deserve immense praise for it. They're great people. So, what is a narcissistic family structure? Believe it or not, now while this can't be taken as 100% fact, this is always how it's going to be, narcissistic families have very similar and typical household structures. It's actually pretty rare for a full-blown narcissist to marry another full-blown narcissist. It happens, but what is more likely is they are going to marry someone who is codependent, who is an enabler, who is weak and doesn't have good boundaries. This other person will seem like the good parent, but in actuality, what they're really doing is they're enabling the narcissistic behavior. They're not allowing them to have the crisis or the consequence that is needed for their actions, right? Oftentimes, the enabler expects money or praise or affection from the narcissist, okay? This codependent enabler likely grew up in a narcissistic household themselves. So, they will then go on to often have children. Now, the children will play out certain roles as well. The most notorious role is that of the golden child. Okay, it's often the first or second born, and what happens is the narcissist takes on all their projections of what they want to be, of how amazing or special they want to feel, and they put it on this child. This child often grows up feeling like they're very special or unique. Their entire worth or value is derived from meeting a narcissistic needs to feel good. The narcissist vicariously lives through this child and gives it whatever it wants because this child is them. There's no differentiation between this child and the parent. The parent just looks at them as another version of themselves. All right? So what happens when this family has another child? That becomes the scapegoat. The scapegoat is the one who gets all the blame. The guilt and the shame that the narcissist is carrying gets projected on this person. The narcissist doesn't want to carry all these negative feelings, all this shadow qualities that they have about themselves, so they project it onto this child. Now, the scapegoat is actually the one best set up to live a healthy life in the long run, right? They're not being trained and molded to be a narcissist, and they oftentimes do not go ahead with trying to keep this external family image. The scapegoat is usually the truth setter, the one who shows the shadow qualities to the rest of the world. The one who takes in the insanity of the household and refuses to uphold the external image that the family is trying to project. They may be considered a bad child or the rebellious one, right? Or they could be shy and quiet as well. But what they're not trying to do is meet the needs of the narcissist. They're trying to show the family for what they truly are. Now, if the family goes on to have more than just 2 children, they will take on some role of possibly the caretaker, which means that it is this child's responsibility to take care of the other children, or to completely take care of the other parents' needs without ever thinking about themselves or what they want to achieve or do. You're going to be a mascot, which basically means that you're just a jester. You're always making jokes and fun and trying to make sure that there's no tension, and the scapegoat isn't actually going after the narcissist, right? They're just kind of keeping the peace in the family. But most often, it just becomes a lost child. When the roles of the golden child and the scapegoat have been set, usually further children just end up being the lost children, which means that their needs are completely neglected. While the golden child is always saying, oh, look, I have all the attention on me, and the scapegoat is like, hey, pay attention to me, the lost child just gets used to becoming invisible. Sometimes their basic dental hygiene needs aren't even met, right? They just want to be on the periphery and just hope that the narcissist doesn't notice them so they don't attain any of that wrath. How do we heal from a narcissistic family structure? It is really not covered well enough within Western society how damaging narcissism is, especially when you have a narcissistic parent, okay? Healing from these family dynamics is very difficult. If you're a scapegoat, you're actually a step ahead, even though you're going to be carrying a lot of shame and guilt and just rage from what was done to you. If you're a golden child, it's going to be even more difficult because you're likely carrying a lot of narcissistic qualities the narcissist tried to put on you. You have to come to terms that you're not entitled. You're not special, okay? Not at least relative to other people. So, here's what we first need to do. You have to accept the narcissistic parent is very unlikely to change. Maybe they will, but there should be no expectation, and it is highly unlikely. When you have narcissistic personality disorder, and the older you get, you become entrenched in those ways. Remember, narcissists don't seek out mental health help. And if they do, it's usually to manipulate the therapist themselves, okay? You have to accept the parent is what they are and not expect them to change or become better. Next, probably the hardest part for almost anyone recovering this is you have to look at the role the enabling, the good parent played in all this. Sure, maybe they came to your defense here and there. Yeah, they're way nicer than the narcissist in contrast. But the codependent parent oftentimes are way crazier and more insane than they are letting on, and they are able to hide their insanity behind everything going on with the narcissist. Because the matter of fact is, you have to be insane to allow this behavior to happen to your children. And they enabled it. They allowed it to continue. They continually took the narcissist's side. Their relationship with this mentally unhealthy person was more important than protecting and giving unconditional love to their own children. You have to accept and bring to the surface how angry and how wrong you were, and integrate those feelings and not excuse the behavior of the codependent and enabling parent. Also, we have to begin to assert our boundaries. Remember, narcissistic families do not accept boundaries, right? They don't acknowledge them, they don't respect them. So we need to begin to assert them and let them know, the narcissist, how we need to be treated. I have a video as well on boundaries that you should go to. If the narcissistic family does not accept our boundaries, right, or completely continues to disrespect them and not acknowledge them, it is okay to separate from your family. This is what I had to do. We have this notion in Western culture, it's not a good one, that blood is thicker than water. You always have to be with your family. If your family does not have your wellness or your mental stability at heart or care one bit, and you completely exist to just gratify their needs, that is not a healthy relationship or a healthy dynamic to be in. You are allowed to leave. Also, you have to become attuned to your internal environment, right? When you're growing up in a narcissistic household, you weren't allowed to have emotions or feelings that didn't accentuate the narcissist's valuation of themselves. So you have to begin to go inward and tap in and notice how you feel. Notice when things aren't okay, right? You haven't been able to explore your own internal environment because you were constantly focused on meeting the needs of the narcissist in the household. We have to address the narcissistic qualities that we may have adopted. Okay, guys, there's no shame or guilt in this. I had to do this as well. All right, it's called fleas. Growing up in this house, you just get some of it. It's all you've been exposed to. You have to do your research. You have to gain awareness of what narcissistic personality disorder looks like, what these traits look like. See them in yourselves and go ahead and feel the internal pain and go inward and allow yourself to release all these qualities. Last but not least, if you grew up in a narcissistic household, you are more likely to call on relationships and friendships that are very much similar to this family dynamic. All right? It becomes very common for people who grew up with a narcissistic parent to then have a narcissist as a partner. All right? We are unconsciously carrying out these family dynamics in our own relationships, and we need to address them. You do not need to keep your past as your present. You do not need to keep bringing these unhealthy people. Your childhood wasn't okay. The relationship dynamics that you grew up with weren't okay. You need to learn that these are things that you should not be trying to recreate, and you should be looking out for the red flags. Thank you for watching this video. Healing narcissistic personality disorder takes, or the traits you may have picked up from them takes time. Right? Please be sure to subscribe to my channel. All right? Click the little bell so you get notifications whenever I put on videos. And as well, make sure to leave a comment below and let me know if you grew up in this family dynamic as well. Thank you for watching.